I have here with me today Smruti Sudarshan, and I met Smruti on LinkedIn, and she started talking to me about educational data mining. I was completely interested because I had not encountered that topic or what it is or how it's useful or what those use cases are. And so I am just so pleased to have Smrti on today to share with us about data mining in education, and what that means and learning more from her. So Smrti, will you please do a better job of introducing yourself and sharing some of your background?
Yeah, sure. By the way, thanks for getting me online and giving me this platform to share what exactly is educational data mining. So, brief introduction about myself. I work for LinkedIn as an e-learning training specialist, and I specialize only on the e-learning aspect of their learning and development sorts. So yeah, that's about the quick introduction. But then I am a data enthusiast, so I love data and I like what stories data tells. And also, I'm really excited to uncover certain insights what data tells, especially when it comes to education and learners and those aspects. But to give a quick introduction about educational data mining, let me break this down into a bit more simplistic approach, wherein I'll first talk about what exactly is what is learner data, then bring in the concept of mining and how exactly is L&D and educational data mining, also called EDM, is going to marry each other in the end. So yeah, I think one thing about learner data is that like if you're on an online class or if you're like say or in a virtual classroom setting and you're like face to face, so what would you exactly do? You as an instructor would basically see or read your learners expressions, right? And then you would go like if someone's yawning or if someone's like disinterested and is there in another world, what would you do? You would like randomly give them a pop quiz, or if you have a marker or a chalk in your hand, you would just throw it and then say, you know what, get up, this is not the thing to do. Or you would do something that would grab their attention onto the training. But this is possible only on your face-to-face learning, or in an instructor-led training. But what would you do like when you're on an e-learning setup? Like the learner would just communicate with the computer, and they wouldn't have much instructor or any kind of human intervention that would come in for them to understand how exactly the training is going. So that is where the entire concept of learner data comes in, wherein this is just like the footprints which a learner leaves on your LMS or on any kind of digital platform that you're on. So those footprints are also known as the learner's digital body language, like how you have body language in classrooms, like I just said, yawning or dreaming, and those are all body languages that the learner communicates to the instructor. But similarly, we do have the same body language, but it's on a digital platform which is known as the digital body language. So I think you would have seen the concept of digital body language even on your day-to-day basis. Like for example, take Amazon. In Amazon, you would have, like, if you have had some book that you are interested in, or if you have some kind of an item that you have added to the cart, the next time when you get onto Amazon, you would have those recommendations, similar items in your recommendations. Similarly, on Netflix also, like I like watching horror movies. So if I go and click on horror movie, and then the next time when I come up on Netflix, I would get the series of horror movies which Netflix would suggest. So similar to that is what we are doing with learner data. And what we do with that data is that we kind of mine them. Mine as in, like, you can just think of it like how you go and query in a mine, like coal mining and then query mining and stuff like that. So similar to that, what we are doing here is that we are going to mine the data just to find the insights of what the learners are thinking. So that is where the learner data mining comes into picture. And when we use this on an educational setup, we call it as educational data mining, or so to call as EDM.
Oh my gosh, this is so interesting. I already got questions going around. I love all the analogies that you're giving, Smruti. And so the first question I had was, okay, so we are reading their digital body language, which I just love that analogy because you're so right. I mean, my first, place as a trainer was as a face, to face type of trainer. And yeah, I mean, as soon as somebody yawns or shows that body language, like you start doing silly things, your voice may get louder, it might get quieter to see if they're going to pay attention, something surprising. So
Right.
you build a program, are you thinking that you've got to put something extra like some kind of XAPI or some kind of other code on that SCORM package or whatever it is in order to read the body language, right? Because it seems like as most, records are now, like the SCORM packages, it's just about quizzes. And so I imagine you'd have to, are you looking for certain body language data before you build your course to implement that into the kind of data that you collect in the course before it ever gets loaded and it ever gets tracked?
Yes, XAPI is one of them. Like that's the most important thing in order to track the digital body language. But also we do use another program, an algorithm, which tends towards the learning analytics part, and also it's basically a combination of both learning analytics and also AI. So it's AI driven as well as so. If I have to give this in a much more better format, so imagine you have learning analytics as one circle, and in that you have learner data and the EDM coming in learning analytics. But what happens with analytics is that it also kind of overlaps with machine learning or the AI part of it. And when both of them overlap, there's that one small bit in the overlap which comes as EDM. So EDM not only comes as the statistical data, it also shows you like graphs and charts and stuff like that, just to understand, or if you are an L&D consultant and you're building a course and you're giving consultation, performance consulting. So what happens is that when you see those graphs and when you analyze that data, you would be in a better position to give your stakeholders what they want, rather than you kind of designing something much more intuitively. So there was one use case, but not in LinkedIn, but I was working in a previous company wherein we had a set of field engineers, and all of them, the main job, day-to-day job, was troubleshooting. And what they would do on troubleshooting was that they would get on calls. They would kind of, like for example, if you're a troubleshooting engineer, the customer would give you a call and then say, suppose laptop is not working. How do you fix my laptop? I need to fix my laptop. So that was the kind of troubleshooting tickets that they would get, and this would be in the form of tickets basically. And what we did was, like, again, intuitively, we as learning consultants and instructional designers and content developers got together and we said that, great, this is a great opportunity. Let's make this content gamified. And we gave them a gamified content. Okay. And what the feedback that we got from the stakeholders and the manager was that, see, this is not the correct format which we were expecting, because as of now, we are not trying to solve this problem of getting a game on, but we are trying to solve something else, wherein we want to kind of get the learners to understand what their day-to-day job is, and also clear off the tickets on a day-to-day basis. So there, how we figured this problem was that we had something known as the net promoter score, and that score was linked on to our EDM site, and the EDM basically the EDM platform or the algorithm that was there. So we saw that there was one place where whenever the field engineer would take the call, he would go and start playing the quest. He or she would start playing the quest of that game, and they would not even complete the first level or first round of it because they were so busy troubleshooting on the call. So what we did was we gathered that data, we gathered that insight, and we went back and we told our stakeholders that, okay, see, this is totally not working out. All they need is just a job aid, and maybe you can give them like a series of micro learnings for 3 minutes on what exactly are they doing, and what jobs are they doing and how they can go about it. The gamified part of it, you can keep it for the new hires. So when they just come out of their, freshly graduated college, and then they're getting into the process training and the jobs training part of it. So that is where you can give this course rather than giving them the job aid. So, I mean, the result of it was that the number of tickets that got solved for that portion or that quarter increased. So that kind of tended to even, increase in the revenue aspect of it, because the number of tickets that were getting solved were much higher when compared to what they were doing on a day-to-day basis.
So even just capturing that net promoter score was enough data to have you guys change course and realize what that body language was of the learners. And so how did you capture a net promoter score so early in the course? I mean, how many did you build in? I'm just curious about like where do you structure things like this to get data that means something?
Oh, that's actually a very good question. Like it gets into the details of how exactly a data behaves. So the thing with EDM is that there is no structure for them. So there is no structure as is. So what we're going to do is that how we captured the data as soon as possible was the kind of drop-off rates that we were getting. So if, say, for example, the learner takes up the first mission of the course, and then he or she kind of drops off at the second question or the third question itself, then that was like a repeating pattern, not just for one person. It was a repeating pattern for other people as well. So like, for example, if I'm saying that this course is taken by 10 people, out of 10 people, 6 people were dropping off at that question itself, because they were getting tickets in such a way that the kind of troubleshooting that they were doing was on a very monotonous basis, or they had just one issue that they had to deal with. So that is where we kind of figured out that this is where they're dropping off. And also one thing that we figured was the devices part of it. So there were like people who would take while they were traveling on a metro, and they would take our courses. So they would play the game over there, and then they would finish the entire game, and then they would come back and try to implement the same thing in their day-to-day job. Or they would do something like that, wherein they would play the game during their coffee break and come back. But the problem was that the retention rate was not as great as what used to happen. So when we saw that they were going back like twice, thrice, and multiple times onto the same course, then we analyzed and we just went on to them and asked, like, why are you actually going so many times to the course? Like, is there a problem with the course? Or is it that you're not able to understand what is happening in the course? So that's when they kind of got back to us saying that, this is not okay with us, because we have to play that entire game while we are talking to the customer. So do we concentrate on the game winning part of it, or do we concentrate on the customer's call? So that is how we kind of figured out that they would need a job aid rather than having a game content in there.
That's a great example. Okay, so now you are putting places where you are looking at the data. And I've done this before, like when I did my dissertation, I had to capture data, and I didn't even have any API, because you can capture things like drop-off rates, if they complete things, time inside the course, and how many times they revisit the course without any extra things. And so for most of the courses that you're looking for this data mining, do they all need to have some kind of other features on there to track data? Do you recommend anything else that you're tracking, like, I don't know, whether people click on an interaction or something? What are some of the things that, just from your experience, you would recommend?
Yeah, I think only thing to capture that data that is required as of now is Excel. Excel is a very good way of capturing data, and also Google Forms. So we use Google Forms as well. You don't have to have like all these XAPI and all of that. So even if you have a simple Google form, that would also kind of, in the responses section, you would get something related to the data there. So again, it again depends on how you want to do it. So if you have a class of like, say, 30 or, manageable 15 class members that are in there, then I think Google Forms would be a best way to do it. But if you have like a course that is there online, like the one that we were doing was catering to 2,500 employees of that batch. And also in the education sector, we were dealing with 500 students in there. So that is where the XAPI comes into picture, because XAPI gives you a heat map of what exactly is going on. So even if you do not have an XAPI, if you have a normal LRS, and if the LRS can visualize the data for you, I think you're good to go with it. Apart from that, if you have your course ID, also, like, if you're searching anything in terms of the courses part of it, I mean, that is also good enough. But I would definitely recommend having, an Excel or a Google form if you need to collect data.
Okay, so I'm just so we want to be clear, an LRS is a learning record store, which is a little bit different from an LMS.
Not little. I mean, usually these days, LMS comes with LRS. If you get into any basic LMS as well, both of them would come in hand in hand. But in case you do not have an LMS, then I think LRS is another next best option to go for.
Okay. All right. And so you don't have any recommendations as far as like, so you're saying that it just gives a heat map when you put that XAPI on it, and there's no other specific things that you put on there unless you specifically design that I want to capture how many points they earn in this game in the variables or whatever. Okay.
Right. So also it's also about capturing the real-time data. Now, for example, if there are like say about 10,000 people who have logged into your LMS and are taking the same course. So the real-time data over there would show a leaderboard as such, but then we would be seeing it in terms of scatter plots. So what happens in scatter plots is that, so each point on the graph would represent a learner. So if I am, say, student 22 and you are student 23, so what difference would that make? So in student 22, the data that you would be capturing is that, like, student 22 on question 5 is spending 5 minutes, but student 23 on question 5 is spending 15 minutes. Okay, so then there is that difference. Like, why is it that student 23 is spending so much time and then you're spending just less time? And also in terms of, like, say, if you're giving a video, there's another use case actually. So there was an AI course that we were kind of developing, and that AI course had, like, what, 10 minutes at a stretch, six videos. So basically the learner would sit on the LMS for 60 minutes. That's like for 1 hour. See 1 hour videos at a stretch, each video of 10 minutes span. What happened was that after every 20 minutes, the learner would drop off. So this would not like, just be, pause and then go back and then come into the same LMS part of it. It would just be like 10 minutes and then drop off, coming back after 2 to 3 days. And then again, just spend that again 10 minutes, drop off, and come in after 2 to 3 days. So when we figured this kind of pattern that was happening online, what we found was that the learner is not able to grasp the video after the 20th minute, because the video had something to do with coding. And for coding, we would require a sandbox environment, and we would require, them to type and do a project sort of a thing. So what we did was that we shortened the video length to like 7 minutes, which was just the introduction part. And then we gave them a sandbox environment and a DIY project, which goes on for the next 2 weeks, so that at the end of the course, they would be submitting a DIY project. So though we took a blended approach rather than having just a self-directed approach. So again, this is all calculated on the basis of data. So we just didn't go by our intuition saying that, this is not the right thing to do. Now I'm going to change it to just interactive learning, and learners would be happy with it. So we kind of designed a learner-centric approach by using the data and not by the intuition or our experience part of it.
Does this thinking about learning data and kind of making changes on the fly, if you will, or in the moment, does it kind of make you think a little bit differently about when it is that you roll a course out to a learner? Because maybe you do a draft if you know that you're just going to go and probably make some changes to that. Maybe you don't build a full game before you release it to them and get some data. Has that kind of changed
Right.
the way that you approach it just because of the data that you can get in real time?
Yes, actually, yes. That due to that, what we are doing is that we are creating a lot of pilots rather than just creating one full-fledged course. We create a lot of pilots before we even get on to creating the course. So, I mean, there was this structure which or a process that they would follow. When first would be an introduction, then there would be learning objective, and then you would get a video and then a question. So there was this kind of structure that used to go on in whatever L&D field that I was there in. And then what happened was that when we kind of put this forth and when we said that, you don't have to have the structure, because most of them do not even spend like 1 second on certain pages. So you can definitely eliminate those pages and concentrate more on what you have to give. So that kind of led us to having a lot of pilots before even getting into the actual course development. So yeah, I mean, in a way, it was time consuming in the beginning. But once the process got ingrained in everyone, like just to get that data and then have that data feedback sort of a thing, once that was ingrained, I think they got the feel of what they want and how they have to do it.
Okay, so I'm ready to keep going, Smruti. So tell me the next part. I mean, you told me they were going to get married at the end.
Oh yeah. So the marrying bit is where the use case of another thing comes in. So if you've seen in most of our courses, like definitely the piloting part is one, but how exactly are they going to get married is that one is definitely how you're going to align your learning objectives with your business outcomes. So I think that has kind of helped us a lot. It's not just by me telling it or someone else in the L&D field telling it. It is data who's telling it. And and what happens when data tells and when you mine those insights is that, so there was one case wherein there was a course that was rolled out, and what had happened was that since we were a global team at that time, it was just a dawn of COVID, and then we just shifted out and everyone were working from home. And what happened was that we rolled out a course, I think, and it was purely in English. And there were like countries who were there, like Latin America, and there was Africa, Philippines, and China as well. Yeah. So what happened was that we rolled out English. It was a global course, so we rolled out saying that English is global, and then we went out into rolling it out like that. So there what happened was that the heat map that I was just talking about was where we got from our localizations. So there was a lot of drop, and no one actually took the course at all in the end from all those places. And the investment was such that we made something in dollars, like thousands of dollars. And the investment to build that course was so much that everyone had to take that course in order to clear that and get into the process training. So we had a certificate set up and stuff like that. So since it was English, no one in that areas or those areas took up those courses. So that's where in the first quarter we observed that there was a drastic drop in those areas. And then only just like parts of US, parts of India, I think parts of Russia as well took up those courses. But then everywhere else, like China, Philippines, the eastern part of it didn't take, and even the Latin America part of it didn't take the courses, just because of the fact that they were not comfortable with the kind of English that we were talking, and also the kind of voiceover that was provided in the course. So this was something that was figured out from the heat map, and by just mining those data points on that heat map. So we saw that since the increase was there in US and all of that, since it was a global course, at least we are supposed to see some sort of green spots in each of the areas, which we were not able to see. So that's where we kind of mostly invested in the localization bit, and also on customizing it to the local areas, so that we kind of communicate what we want to tell them. And also it's not only that, it kind of forms this knowledge society as such. So learning doesn't have a language, and learning happens almost continuously. And that was also something that we were able to prove through the EDM part of it. And also what we analyzed in the end was that, I mean, people do contradict this, and we had a lot of contradictions that came in when we said that, this is how it is happening. After the use case of the heat map that I was just talking about, we also figured out that higher the effort you put in, the amount of learning is less. So the more effort you put, the learning was less, because the course what we just sent out, like, for imagine, I think they had like 8 quizzes in that course, and quiz 1 to 7 or quiz 1 to 5 was also okay. They kind of had that average score. Everyone had the average score. And then after 5 to 7, the scores kind of dropped down.
They didn't care anymore. They're like, oh,
yeah.
other
And then when we went back and we checked, like, why exactly is this dropping off, we saw that we had given them a DIY project at each of those quizzes. So they had basically a coding section of it in the end. So even though we had localized it, everything was as per what they needed. So even though that was done, there was a coding section of it which required the learner to spend at least 15 to 20 minutes in a day. And that means effort from the learner's end, just to be, in touch with whatever they had to do. So that is where we figured out that, okay, this effort is not working. And also we could apply this to our ILT trainings, wherein they had like straight 8 hours of ILT on Zoom sessions, like virtual ILTs on Zoom sessions. So even though they were working hard to do that, and then, learning the textbooks and all of that, at the end of the day, the certification was not showing it. And also their the passing rate was something that passing score was something that was not being shown over there. So this is something that we were able to determine. And when we went back to the management saying that, see, this is the issue, I think we may have to reduce a bit on the effort part of it, and don't spend a lot of money. We did get a pushback saying that, no, I think we have to keep that 8 hours straight. Otherwise, how do we know if someone's actually learning or not? That's where the entire thing of EDM came in. And then we had to prove it to them through data, saying that this is how it goes. And then this is what we propose as an easier solution to work about.
I love that you can have a conversation with a business that disagrees with you about how training should be delivered. And it's not an argument. It's just, well, this is what the data says. It's not me. It's not my opinion or ego or any of that kind of stuff. It's just like, well, the data tells us, and that's a lot. That's an easier conversation to have with the stakeholders and the subject matter experts, whoever is in charge of that project, by just showing data. So, all right. So tell me more. So you want to think about the business objectives. You are then, of course, aligning your learning objectives with these business objectives. And then also, I imagine you're going to attach places that you grab data to see if they are meeting these learning objectives that are aligned with the business objectives. And then you're throwing it out in pilots to these learners and seeing basically what sticks, where those issues are. Do you think that there's some places where maybe a better needs analysis could have, prevented or predicted some of the things that you find with the data?
That's actually a really good thing. But the thing with needs analysis is that even though we conduct the needs analysis, especially in a corporate environment, we do not have the direct interaction with the customer. So we would be catering to teams. So if the team lead says that, you have to get it done in this way, then we get it done in that way. So there is no other thing that we are supposed to do, or we cannot say that, this is not the right way to do it. Or, even if you try consulting them, saying that, with my experience, this would be a bit more interactive approach. Like, no, I don't think so, because I know my team, I know how they are, so they want it this way. So I think in that way, that navigation part of it becomes a little bit more easier, rather than sitting on the needs analysis call and then giving them consultations on how we are going to do it. And also in terms of the needs analysis, even if you're talking to the learners, so as of now, with the COVID part of it, since we have just gone online, so even the activity happens through the computer part of it. So even if the learner comes and tells you that, this is something that I don't want, you just cannot cater to one learner. You have to cater to 10 other learners who are also taking that course and who says that, this is a problem with it and this is a problem that needs to be fixed. So I think that kind of analysis part of it kind of helped us, just not in terms of navigating through the learner needs or how the corporate learners think, also to understand what the online learner behaviors are. So we know that there are like different types of learners. I think there are 8, if I'm not wrong, 8 different types of learners. But if you just come to the online scenario, those 8 have been come down to like 5 broad categories of online learners. And one of the major things with online learning is that there are people who are learners who are like, okay, this course is not for me. So they take up the first course and then they go through like 2 modules and they're like, this is so boring. Let me move on to the next one. And then they just keep on hopping on from one course to another course, which kind of becomes really difficult to track at the end of the day. So there would be certain percentage of that. And there would also be certain percentage of learners who would really sit through the course and get through the entire quiz part of it. So what we're doing here is that we're kind of giving them a universal solution as to what can be avoided, rather than just deciding it during the needs analysis part and then going about the entire development. So there is a cycle that it follows, and that cycle can be reversed as well. So basically when you say that you're going to design, so after designing you're going to monitor. From monitor, you're reporting, and in the reporting section you gain insights, and then you go back to design again. So from design you again get back to the reporting part, and we say that this is somewhere not working, and we change our strategy, or we put in something extra, or delete something, so that there is a difference between nice to know and need to know sort of a thing. So I think all of these are certain things that could not be captured during the needs analysis part, and definitely the data would provide better insight into what exactly the course would look like at the end of the day.
I think it's so fair, Smruti, to talk about there are many times in corporate workplace learning, training, whatever we're going to call it, where your hands are tied. I mean, you really are going to be the order taker. You are going to do it their way, and you can't win with arguments, right? We just know that about human nature, because once you start arguing with somebody, well, now their ego's on the line. They have to defend their position, and you're never going to win that way. And so, just having a vehicle to avoid argument and still get that iterative process in there, and then have real facts where you are now showing the way instead of telling the way. I think that, besides all the wonderful things that, reading this learner body language and data would give us, that alone is a pretty neat feature. So tell me more about, I didn't even realize, but when you start talking about, Smruti, about how there are different types of online learners, right? Like the kinds that just skip around. And I was even trying to think about the kind that I am. I'm definitely a skip around type of learner, but I'm curious. So you said there are 5. Can you think of a couple more, just out of my own curiosity, what those are, about the typical patterns that online learners take?
So there's one really interesting pattern that all the 5 online learners take, but I cannot remember their names because it's definitely there in the paper, but the names are something that's not coming to my mind as of now. But you can broadly classify them. One usually the visual learners part of it. Next is definitely the social learners part, and other one is the exploratory learner, if I may have to say that. There are other 2 which is not coming to my mind as of now. Maybe I would follow it up after this. But yes, what happens with all these learners is that one thing is, again, we may have to go back to our Amazon behavior online. So what happens is that you are considering a learner as a consumer. Example, so you're considering learner as a consumer, and that consumer, say, is on Amazon. Now what would happen on Amazon is that if you're a visual learner, then you would just do window shopping. You would just see through that, okay, so this dress is really attractive. Now I may have to buy it, and I know I have to buy it. So again, as a visual learner, what I would do is that I would go and click on the dress, and I would see that, okay, this is really nice. Now I just straight on add it to the cart and then move on, and pay and then be done with it. So that's your visual learner over there. So similarly, putting it onto an LMS, a visual learner is one who, like, sees what is there on the course and what they learn, and what kind of graphics that are there on the course. So if the graphic or the thumbnail image is really good, and they're really attracted to the heading part of it, I mean, that's where they kind of like say, okay, I'm really interested in this, and they would take the course. But if you're like a social learner, or if you're something else in there, so what would happen is that you would not go see the course, but you would go and see the reviews part of it. So if the customer reviews are good for that course, or if the customer reviews are good for that dress, then you would straight out go ahead and buy it if you're a social learner. Similarly, putting that onto an LMS, if the discussion threads in there, or if the comments in there, and if the number of likes in them are really good, and then if there is something that you can kind of if the learner can pitch in, so that is where the social learner, and you're trying to kind of tap into their curious mind, that is where your social learning comes into picture. But as an exploratory learner,
I'm sorry, Smruti, I'm only interrupting you because as a field, I think we've all determined that learning styles are actually a myth. And so I thought that you were going to get into like that there are almost like categories of the ways that people interact with online courses. But as far as like, are there visual learners, social learners, these kinds of things, that they actually found, like through studies, that that's a myth to think that, people only learn auditory or visual or those kinds of things. And so I just, would want to be careful about telling, our audience that they are, different learning styles. But I would imagine that there probably are, and I don't know if there's any research on it, but I would imagine that there probably are different ways that people usually consistently interact with online courses. Like it was kind of like ringing bells for me, like when you said, oh yeah, like the people that just kind of hop around just to get to what they need kind of learners. And I would imagine that I would be curious about like studies on, the way that different types of people interact with their online.
Oh, just the online elements part of it. Oh yeah, I think in that way, I think there was one which we figured out, like how exactly the hamburger menu, you can the learner would interact with that, and also in terms of the patterns that would be formed, like people who would usually skip around and then check what pattern is formed in there. So I don't know if I can show the heat map in here. So if possible, I can share that with you on the heat map or the learner model for it. What we figured out was that the model, so if you consider green, red and green, so to say that, so there are a set of learners who are also visually impaired in there, which is something that we would not be able to figure out from just the normal corporate scenario. So the way it would interact was that we did have a place where there was like this eyeball tracking part. So if you're an exploratory learner, the eyeballs would the red portions, that's the exploratory learner, would go from one image onto another. So you would immediately see that time frame jump from one image to another image, or from one place to another place. You would see that fast interaction with the entire place of it on the entire screen. But if you are like say a normal person, or you like to go something in depth, or understand how exactly the course is, there would be one pattern that is formed in one single line over there. So it's just that from top to bottom there would just be one portion of the screen that would be covered, and then later on when you move on to the next portion of the screen, only that portion of the screen is something that would be covered. So again, the time gap between both of them would be different, and also would be different for different people who are coming in over there. But then that was such an interesting pattern to find out, like there's one person who's just seeing this pattern over here, and there are like people who go through everywhere on the screen, and then how exactly it's working and what it's doing as well. So also this kind of gave us to understand one more thing known as sentiment analysis. So we would kind of grab the sentiments in there. So if I say that I put a course like compliance course and a normal like say Java course. So the compliance course would basically have like say a family or some sort of a thing like that, wherein there's danger that's shown, or an infosec course that would show like security and stuff like that. So what would happen is that immediately that was the thing that would grab the attention. So it would not be this Java course that would grab. So it would be that security and the infosec that would grab the attention, because we would literally see their pattern going like this. So the eyeball tracking machine showed us this image rather than showing this side or this side image. So I think that was one way of checking what pattern and what image that can be used and what can be changed also on the course.
Do you guys ever do, like if we're talking about treating our learners like customers, do you guys ever look at A/B testing, like do a course one way and do like maybe just change one small thing and a second version of that pilot just to see what the different data is? Do you guys do anything like that, or is that just too time consuming? Or
so if the course is not in a rush, again, if you're doing, once the course is done, so we do this in a post course manner. So we do not do it on the on live course, but we do it on the post course. So wherein we take that course and we do the A/B testing for it. So like if we use this strategy, how it would work, and if we use this strategy, how it would work, sort of a thing. But our strategy would come, like the EDM part of it would come mostly into picture on real time itself. So we would just give them the real time data and not the A/B testing part, because it comes under, a bit more time consuming, because as of now, they just needed the real time data rather than, seeing what exactly how they're learning. But research wise, yes, we would do it post once the course was live.
okay. And so now we're talking about, so now you've put your course up there and you are it's rolled out to the students, and you're starting to look for, heat maps, you've said so far, the eyeball trackers. What are some of those other things that you look for? Like what's like your checklist of things that you're looking for when you're doing your data mining?
I think one is the browser usage. So which browser are they using in? And also the second thing which we would be using is what kind of courses are they seeing? So if there are like a bunch of courses up there, so what kind of courses are they seeing? Definitely the dropout rates. Quiz data is something that we would definitely be looking into. And also in terms of the eyeball tracking part of it and the sentiment analysis part of it, we have that like, comment, and also the share part of it. So how many likes goes in and how many dislikes come in. And also we do have like micro interactions which come on the course, like there's a star that comes up. So once you're done with the course, there's a star that comes up through the LMS itself. So that micro interactions, like how many stars were collected, like how many, badges were collected in there. So it's not called badges as such. So usually it's a star, which we do, and how many points were collected as well. That is something that we track. But also for the quiz part of it, we do have the step-by-step tracking as to how they go on the screen. So if they're moving around from quiz question 1 to question 3 directly, what is wrong with question 2? And if all the students are doing that, like what is wrong with question 2? Then there's something wrong with the interaction. And if you say that they're skipping all the questions and directly going on to the final result slide of it, like was the question so easy, or was it like do we have to make it more tough? And also in terms of like the quizzes and the analysis part of it, so at the end of the day when we collect those reports, that is where we do the analysis and we show it to our stakeholders, saying that this is what we have analyzed and this is how it is. But most of our real-time tracking happens with our gamified content. And how they react to. And also we do have those competency matching that happens in there. So if there are like certain competencies, due to some skill gap analysis that we create, and then, if those gap analysis show you that, certain competencies are, not matching. So then we have a rubric that is plugged into the system. And that rubric is something that would calculate the competencies and give you on what exactly are the employees lacking, or what exactly can be done to match those skill gaps.
Interesting. Okay, so most of our audience, they are new instructional designers, or maybe they are transitioning into our field. And so I love what you've been talking about, Smrti. I think that it's essential to, especially, innovation and where we're going and how we can grow in our industry, to track and read our data better. And even to just think about the data that you're going to get at the end from the beginning. So what are some of those things that you would tell new instructional designers or people just getting into our field about how they can start thinking about data and what kind of data they really want to focus on as a new instructional designer?
I think as a new instructional designer, you may want to see the drop off. I think that's a very good way to start off. And also, the data that they can collect are also in terms of the visual design of what they're doing, because since you're doing a lot of e-learning, so I think the visual design aspect of it also comes into picture. So where the next button is placed, where the transcript button is placed, where the settings button is placed. So I think those kind of data, the UI UX data, so that is something also that they can collect, because there are times wherein learners, you can't give them whatever they need, but you would definitely could understand a problem as to why exactly are they not taking the course, or why exactly are they not proceeding further. So I think that is one another thing that we can figure out as a new person. But then the most important thing, I think, would be to figure out if localization is needed or not, or if customization is needed or not. Because if we just kind of go ahead and create a global English course, and then, even though if it is good or bad or whatever it is, if it is not suiting the audiences to certain areas, with us going online as of now, then I think you would see a lot of dropouts rather than seeing people who would be enabling stuff for your course. So I think those are certain things that would be pretty much important.
And how much of a pilot would you put up there to just get data and feedback before you build the full thing? Like when you guys do pilots, how much of a draft are they? How rough are they before you put them up there and start tracking data?
Okay, so what we do is that we kind of divide our learners. So if there's a project that's coming in, so we definitely do divide our learners into batches, and each batch is going to have a different pilot. So with each prototype that we send out for each batch, so if we say that we have like 3 batches, so each batch would have a different thing, or there would be some feature that would be put in, or some feature that would be eliminated, seeing on the batch 1 0 0 1 2 3, like that. So the final product, which caters to everything, would be at the batch 0 part of it. But apart from after batch 0 is something that we do not get into the piloting part, but we get into straight onto the live courses. So this is I think the pilot that we follow. But then by the time we get onto batch 0, the kind of target audiences we are catering is also pretty different. So in batch 0, we would be catering to an experienced person, like completely experienced, or like, say 15 years into the process or 15 years into the job, and that is where we put in our batch 0. And then like batch 1 has a little lower level, like who has like 4 or 5 years of experience, and then a batch 2 would be like just with 2 years experience, and batch 3 would be like completely new person who comes onto the field. So that's how we kind of do our testing as well, to collect the data.
Oh, interesting. And then you kind of, based on that data, you can create a course that kind of serves all the different roles, or do you still keep them separate?
Oh no, we build a course which caters to all of them. So
That's fascinating. Okay. All right. So what is your, I just love so much of what you shared. I think that you've probably, sparked so much curiosity in those that have come to listen to you today, Smruti. So what was your best and final advice for new instructional designers before we end our podcast?
I think is that don't listen to what you think is right, and just listen to what your data is talking, and what the learners are giving a feedback as, because that can be a great data point as to how you can design your future courses. And also it kind of tends to an experience sort of a thing, like, just listening to that data and, not listening to what you feel is right. So I think that would give a better solution, a logical solution, rather than us thinking, this is the right way to do it and then, go about it. So I think best don't listen to yourself and go about listening to the data part.
I love that advice. Get rid of your assumptions. Look at the data. That is wonderful advice. Thank you so much, Smruti, for coming and share us about educational data mining. Where can we find you and more resources if we want to go dig further in EDM?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn is the best way to get in touch with me. And also most of my blogs are also on EDM is there on LinkedIn. If not, there's a blog on my website. Like most of the data part of it is there. I've written blogs on my website, so you could go ahead and see that on my website as well.
And what's your website? We'll put it in the show notes, but just say it.
It's a Wix site, so it's my portfolio, but I can definitely leave a thing there on the notes part of it.
Well, wonderful. Well, we can't wait to read more from you, Smruti. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.